Lorado Masiko stepped out of her car, the soft hum of Lusaka's evening traffic fading behind. The rooftop restaurant shimmered with golden lights, casting a warm glow over the city skyline. She took a deep breath, adjusting the modest dress she had chosen for the night, a simple, elegant piece that reflected her understated style. The party was lavish, buzzing with music, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. This was her sister Thandai's birthday celebration, and from the moment Lorado arrived, she could feel the eyes of high society guests sizing her up. It didn't take long for her discomfort to find its source. Jabari Chikwi, Thandai's boyfriend, spotted her across the crowd. Flashy suit, expensive watch, and a grin that oozed arrogance, he made a beeline for her. "That's an interesting choice of outfit," he said with a smirk, his tone dripping with condescension. "And still working at that modest little job?" He laughed, loud enough for others to notice. A few family members tittered nervously, unsure whether to intervene. Lorado forced a smile, keeping her voice calm. Inside, her mind raced. She had faced people like Jabari before, people who judged appearances and status without knowing the real story. She felt the tension building, every word from him designed to embarrass her in front of friends and family. Yet, beneath the surface, Lorado knew she wasn't just standing here quietly. She was already planning how to turn this night around. The rooftop lights sparkled, the music played on, and Lorado took a steadying breath, ready to face the storm with grace, knowing the evening was only just beginning. Lorado tried to enjoy the music and the chatter around her, but Jabari had other plans. He hovered nearby, smirking, ready to make her the center of attention in the worst way possible. "So, Lorado," he said loudly, making sure everyone could hear, "still working at that little office job of yours? I mean, you really dressed nicely for someone in a modest role." A few guests chuckled nervously, unsure whether to laugh or feel awkward. Lorado kept her smile polite, nodding slightly. She had learned long ago that letting anger show only gave people like Jabari power. But inside, she was boiling, carefully weighing her words and timing. She knew this man thrived on making others feel small. His arrogance wasn't new to her, and she refused to let him take her dignity. He didn't stop. "And Thandai, are you sure you want your sister around all these big names? It's a bit humble, don't you think?" Jabari laughed again, loud and exaggerated. Some relatives exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable, but hesitant to confront him. Lorado could see their uncertainty, the way they tried to protect the peace while he continued his verbal show. As Jabari carried on, Lorado's mind wandered briefly to the path that had brought her here. At 22, she had started a small tech consulting firm from a tiny office in Lusaka. Back then, she had nothing but ambition, a laptop, and a head full of ideas. Every late night, every hard decision, every risk she had taken had quietly built her company into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. No one at this party, especially not Jabari, had the slightest clue about the real Lorado, the self-made entrepreneur who didn't need flashy clothes or a loud mouth to prove her worth. She took a slow breath and allowed a small, knowing smile to form. This wasn't about anger or revenge. It was about patience, timing, and showing the truth when the moment was right. She could let Jabari continue to act superior all he wanted. He had no idea what she held in her back pocket. And soon, very soon, everyone here would see just how wrong he had been. The music played on, glasses clinked, and the chatter continued. But for Lorado, the world had narrowed down to one thing, the perfect moment to turn this mockery into a revelation. With every snide remark Jabari made, her plan sharpened. She would not only defend herself, she would do it with style, grace, and undeniable proof. Tonight, she wasn't just going to stand there quietly. She was preparing to rewrite the story everyone thought they knew. Lorado glanced at her sister, Thandai, who was laughing brightly with friends across the rooftop. She looked radiant, completely unaware of the subtle attacks happening right beside her. Thandai had always been the kind of person who saw the good in everyone, trusting people at their word. And tonight was no different. She didn't notice Jabari's smirk or the pointed remarks aimed at Lorado, and for a brief moment, Lorado almost envied her innocence. Almost. Jabari, however, was relentless. Every few minutes, he leaned in just enough for those around to hear. "I guess Lusaka's tech scene is humble, isn't it?" he said with a chuckle, glancing at Lorado's simple dress. "Not exactly what we're used to at these high society events." He made sure to emphasize "we," as if to remind everyone present of his so-called superiority. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some offering nervous smiles or polite nods, but no one intervened. Lorado's lips curved into a faint, controlled smile. She let the words wash over her, but inside, her mind was sharp and calculating. Jabari thought he was showing everyone how small she was, how she didn't belong in this crowd. But that was exactly what made him blind. He didn't know her story, didn't know her journey, didn't know the empire she had quietly built from scratch. She took a slow breath, reminding herself that patience was her strongest weapon. Every insult, every snide comment, was just setting the stage for her moment. Let him speak, let him perform, let the tension build. Then, when the time was right, the truth would shine through and leave no room for doubt. Her calm exterior was a shield, and her confidence was growing with every second. In her mind, she replayed the steps that had brought her here. Starting her tech consulting firm at 22, facing skeptical investors, learning from every failure, building her team, and watching her company grow into a multimillion-dollar success. None of that mattered to Jabari. He only saw appearances. And yet, it was exactly this ignorance that would make his downfall so public, so undeniable. As the night carried on, Lorado moved gracefully among the guests, nodding politely, her eyes always aware of Jabari. She let him continue to underestimate her, continue to belittle her, while she quietly enjoyed the irony. Thandai remained blissfully unaware, chatting and laughing, and Lorado felt a surge of protective warmth toward her sister. This wasn't just about proving herself. It was about showing everyone, including Thandai, the power of confidence, patience, and knowing your worth. The rooftop lights twinkled, glasses clinked, and the soft hum of conversations continued around them. Jabari, smug and oblivious, had no idea that with every word, he was digging himself deeper. Lorado's heart beat steadily, her mind clear. She wasn't just standing there, she was preparing for a moment that would leave everyone stunned, including the man who thought he could humiliate her. Lorado excused herself from the crowd, letting the laughter and chatter of the party drift behind her. She stepped into a quiet corner of the rooftop, the city lights stretching endlessly beyond the glass railing. Pulling out her phone, she dialed her assistant, Kajiso, who answered almost immediately. Kajiso, can you send me the latest statements for Masiko Innovations? I need them ready for tonight, she said calmly, her voice steady even as her mind raced with anticipation. Minutes later, she scrolled through her financial statements, her eyes gliding over numbers that told a story far removed from the assumptions Jabari and others had made. Millions in the bank, successful contracts, media features, proof of her hard work and the empire she had quietly built. A small smile tugged at her lips. The irony was delicious. Jabari, with all his bravado and flashy clothes, had no idea that the humble little job he mocked had grown into a multimillion-dollar company. That ignorance, that underestimation, was her advantage. She leaned back against the railing, letting her mind wander briefly. She remembered those early days, long before the financial freedom, the media recognition, or the respect she commanded in business circles. She had been a young woman with a small bag of handcrafted jewelry, selling each piece at Lusaka's busy market. Customers would haggle, and sometimes sales were slow, but she refused to be discouraged. Every bracelet, every necklace she sold was a step toward building something bigger, something lasting. Those were nights of exhaustion, but also nights of hope, when she dreamed of a future where her worth wouldn't be measured by appearances or gossip. The memory made her heart swell, not with regret, but with pride. That humble beginning had shaped her, taught her resilience, patience, and the value of strategy. She had learned to move quietly, to let her actions speak louder than the noise around. And tonight, all of that experience, all of that carefully nurtured power, would come to life. Lorado glanced back toward the party. Jabari was still talking, still preening, still convinced he held the upper hand. She chuckled softly to herself. He had no idea that she held the real power, the kind that came from intelligence, persistence, and unwavering self-belief. She tucked her phone away, feeling a renewed sense of calm and control. For a moment, she allowed herself a deep breath, closing her eyes and savoring the quiet. The city hummed below, the stars above twinkled like silent witnesses, and she felt a rush of anticipation. This was more than just a party, more than a birthday celebration. This was the night she would turn judgment into revelation, mockery into admiration, and assumptions into undeniable truth. Lorado's smile widened. Tonight, she wouldn't just respond, she would shine. Lorado took a final glance at her reflection in the mirrored wall of the rooftop hallway. Her hair was perfectly in place, her dress simple yet elegant, and her posture radiated calm confidence. She smoothed the fabric over her shoulders and stepped back into the party, letting the soft hum of conversation and laughter greet her like an old. Every eye didn't need to notice her yet. She wanted to enter quietly, letting curiosity build, letting anticipation do part of the work. It didn't take long for Jabari to spot her again. He sauntered over with that same arrogant grin, oblivious to the quiet fire simmering just beneath her composed exterior. "Back again," he said, loud enough for a few nearby guests to hear. "I hope you're ready to enjoy the party, even if you don't quite fit in with all this." His gaze swept over the crowd, as if he were reminding everyone of his superiority. A few nervous chuckles floated through the air, but Lorado didn't flinch. She simply tilted her chin slightly, offering a polite smile that didn't invite further ridicule. While Jabari continued his low-key performance of arrogance, Lorado's mind was entirely elsewhere. She had already prepared something special, a small, impromptu presentation that would quietly but powerfully change the evening. She had arranged for a screen at the corner of the rooftop, a projector, and a few visual aids that would make her story undeniable. Everything she needed was ready: numbers, press features, company achievements. Tonight, she wasn't just attending the party, she was creating a moment. She allowed herself a small, inward laugh at the thought of Jabari's face when he realized just how mistaken he had been. Every condescending remark, every smirk, every attempt to make her feel less than had only set the stage for her reveal. Patience had been key, and now the timing was perfect. She could feel the energy of the party, the subtle curiosity building as people glanced toward her, sensing something different in her quiet confidence. Lorado took a slow, deep breath, walking closer to the center of the gathering. "Excuse me, everyone," she said, her voice calm yet clear, commanding attention without shouting. Conversations hushed slightly as guests turned toward her, sensing the shift in tone. Jabari's smirk faltered for a brief moment, but he quickly recovered, still unaware of the revelation about to unfold. Her eyes met Thandai's for a brief second. Her sister was smiling, completely unaware of the storm about to hit, and Lorado felt a surge of warmth. This wasn't about humiliation. It was about truth, confidence, and respect. She gave a subtle nod to the assistant managing the projector, and the screen flickered to life, signaling the start of her carefully planned presentation. The room grew quiet, all eyes on her now. Lorado's heart beat steadily, her mind clear. Every detail of the evening had been building to this point, every insult sharpening her resolve. Tonight, the story would change, and Jabari would finally realize that the quiet, modest woman he had tried to belittle held power far beyond his imagination. Lorado took a slow, steady breath as the projector flickered to life, bathing the rooftop in soft, glowing light. The music faded slightly as the guests sensed the shift. She smiled calmly, letting her confidence fill the space, and began to speak. "Good evening, everyone," she said, her voice clear and poised. "I think it's time I share a little more about who I really am." A few curious murmurs spread through the crowd, but Lorado didn't rush. She let the suspense build, letting the moment stretch just enough for everyone to pay attention. Then, with calm precision, she continued, "I am the founder and majority owner of Masiko Innovations, a tech consulting company I started at the age of 22. The first slide appeared on the screen behind her, bank statements showing the impressive growth of her company. She pointed to them casually, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Here are some of our recent achievements," she said. Charts displayed rising revenue numbers, contracts with major clients, and photos of her team hard at work. Another slide highlighted press features and awards, each one proof of her quietly built empire. The party went completely silent. Glasses paused mid-air, conversations stopped, and all eyes turned toward her. Jabari froze mid-sentence, the smirk wiped clean from his face. His confidence faltered as he scanned the screen, realizing for the first time that the humble little job he had mocked wasn't humble at all. Family members gasped, some covering their mouths in shock. Others exchanged glances, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and embarrassment. A few cousins who had laughed nervously at Jabari's jokes now looked at him with thinly veiled judgment. Thandai's eyes widened, and she turned to her sister with a mixture of pride and awe. "Lorado," she whispered, unable to find more words. Lorado's calm smile didn't waver. She didn't need to shout or demand attention. The evidence spoke for itself. Every detail, every slide, every number she displayed was a testament to her hard work, her resilience, and the success she had built quietly, far from the assumptions and ridicule of people like Jabari. The room felt heavy with the weight of the revelation. Guests who had once whispered politely now stared openly, some impressed, others embarrassed for ever having doubted her. Jabari shifted uncomfortably, attempting to mask his shock, but the evidence was undeniable. The air was charged, a mix of awe, admiration, and the humbling effect of truth being revealed in the most elegant way possible. Lorado paused for a moment, letting the silence stretch, letting everyone absorb it. Then, with a subtle nod and a quiet smile, she stepped back slightly. The damage to Jabari's arrogance was done. The story of the quiet, modest sister had been rewritten, and everyone in the room, especially him, now knew exactly who Lorado Masiko truly was. Jabari stood there like someone had pressed a pause button on him. His mouth was slightly open, his eyes darting between Lorado, the glowing screen, and the stunned guests around him. For a man who always had something to say, silence suddenly wrapped around him like a tight rope. He tried to pull himself together, clearing his throat and adjusting his expensive watch, but the confidence he loved to show off had completely slipped through his fingers. "Ah well, I didn't know you were involved in all this," he finally stammered. waving his hand weakly at the screen as if the numbers and achievements were somehow optional. His voice cracked, and a few guests exchanged amused looks. Someone at the back let out a small laugh they couldn't hold in, and the tension in the room shifted into pure entertainment. Lorato didn't rush to fill the silence. She simply watched him with a calm, polite smile that carried more power than any insult could. "It's okay, Jabari," she said softly, her tone gentle but sharp enough to slice through his ego. "Most people underestimate quiet work. We don't make noise, we just build." The guests murmured in agreement, nodding subtly. Lorato continued, her voice steady and warm. "I started with nothing. Just a bag of handmade jewelry, a small table in a Lusaka market, and a lot of hope. Every day I stood under the sun, trying to sell enough to pay for classes and equipment. Those were hard days, but they shaped me." Her eyes met Jabari's. Sometimes humble beginnings make the strongest foundations. Jabari swallowed hard, trying to pretend he wasn't embarrassed, but the red creeping up his neck betrayed him. He managed a shaky smile. I guess I misjudged things," he said, attempting a laugh that came out awkward and thin. "Oh, just a little," Lorato replied with a playful shrug, and the crowd chuckled. Her wit was gentle, but it landed perfectly. She didn't insult him. She didn't raise her voice. She simply revealed the truth, and the truth did the work for her. All around them, guests whispered to one another. "Did you see the numbers? She's a millionaire? Jabari must be dying right now." More laughter slipped through the crowd, soft but impossible to ignore. Jabari's shoulders sank a little lower with each whisper. He tried one last time to reclaim some dignity. "Well, that's impressive, Lorato. Really." She smiled kindly, her eyes sparkling with quiet triumph. "Thank you, Jabari. And don't worry, success isn't about flashy outfits or loud confidence. It's about character, consistency, and knowing who you are." His lips pressed together. He had no comeback. Lorato didn't need to humiliate him. She didn't need to boast. Her success, her calm, and the entire room's reaction did everything. By the time she stepped away, the guests were already buzzing with admiration, and Jabari's voice, usually the loudest in any room, was nowhere to be heard. For a moment, the rooftop felt completely still, like everyone was holding their breath. Then Thandive slowly stepped forward, her eyes wide with shock and something deeper, pride. She looked at Lorato as if she were seeing her for the first time. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered, her voice soft but filled with emotion. Lorato smiled gently. "I didn't want my success to change how people treated me. I wanted to stay grounded, and I wanted you to shine tonight." Thandive's eyes glistened, and she pulled Lorato into a tight hug. "You're incredible," she said against her shoulder. "And I'm sorry. I should have noticed what Jabari was doing. I should have stood by you." Lorato held her sister, letting the moment sink in. "It's okay. You didn't know. And now you do." When they pulled apart, more family members stepped forward. Her aunt, who had nervously laughed at Jabari's earlier comments, rubbed her arm awkward. "Lorato, we really misjudged you," she said. "We thought you were just doing small business here and we didn't know you built something this big." Another cousin chimed in, shaking his head in disbelief. "I feel embarrassed. I should have supported you. I'm sorry for treating your work like it was nothing." Apology after apology followed, some hesitant, some emotional, all sincere. The same people who had dismissed her earlier now looked at her with respect, admiration, and even a little awe. The shift was almost physical. It felt like the entire room had rearranged itself around her. Lorato accepted every apology with grace. She didn't rub her success in their faces or act superior. Instead, she held herself with the quiet dignity she had always carried. "I understand," she told them. "Sometimes people make assumptions based on what they can see. But success doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it's quiet and patient." The murmurs around her turned warm, full of admiration. A few younger cousins even looked at her like she was suddenly their new role model. Someone whispered, "She's like someone straight out of a success movie," and another responded, "She's better than that. She's real." Thandai looped her arm around her sister's waist, refusing to let her go. "From today onwards," she said with a playful but protective tone, "nobody talks down to my sister. She's the smartest one here." Lorato laughed softly, shaking her head. "It's not about being the smartest. It's about believing in yourself when others don't." The guests nodded, feeling the truth of her words. The energy of the party had completely transformed. Where there had been tension and awkwardness, now there was celebration. Genuine celebration. Everyone wanted to talk to her, ask about her business, hear her journey, share their admiration. But more important than the praise was the shift in how they saw her. No longer the quiet sister. No longer the humble one. Now Lorato was the woman who built an empire from nothing, respected, admired, and finally seen for who she truly was. The power dynamic had changed, and this time, Lorato stood confidently at the center of it. When the excitement of the reveal finally settled a little, Lorado noticed Jabari slipping away toward the quieter side of the rooftop. His shoulders were tense, his steps unsure, very different from the confident swagger he carried earlier. Lorado hesitated for a moment, then decided it was time. Not for revenge, not for a dramatic scene, but for a lesson he clearly needed. She walked toward him with calm, measured steps. Jabari looked up, startled, as if he wasn't expecting her to follow. He forced a weak smile. "Lorado, listen, I didn't mean to." She raised a hand gently, stopping him. "It's okay. You don't need to explain. I just want to talk." Her voice wasn't angry or bitter. It was steady and controlled. Jabari shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting around like he hoped someone might rescue him from the conversation. But no one was paying attention. The rooftop party carried on in the background, music, laughter, clinking glasses, while Lorado and Jabari stood in their own quiet corner. "Jabari," she began, her tone firm but not harsh. "Earlier tonight, you tried to humiliate me. You joked about my clothes, my work, and who I am. And you didn't even stop to think that your words could hurt someone." He swallowed hard. His voice cracked slightly. I didn't think it was a big deal." "That's exactly the problem," Lorado said. "People who feel the need to put others down usually don't think it's a big deal, because they assume they're above everyone else." He dropped his gaze to the floor. She continued, her voice gentle but sharp enough to make her point. "You saw me as someone you could step over, someone who didn't matter enough to respect. But what you didn't know is that humility is not weak. Quiet people are not small, and success doesn't always show itself through noise or expensive things." Jabari nodded slowly, his face pale. "You're right. I acted like a fool. I'm sorry." Lorado studied him for a moment. This wasn't the loud, arrogant man from earlier. This was someone who had finally been forced to face himself honestly. "Apology accepted," she said softly. "But not because you're embarrassed. Accept it because I don't want this to happen to someone else who may not have the voice or confidence to stand up for themselves." He looked up, surprised. "You're much kinder than I deserve." "I'm not doing this for you," she replied with a small smile. "I'm doing it because strength isn't proven by how loudly you shout. It's shown by how you choose to behave when you have the power to hurt someone and decide not to." Jabari exhaled deeply, nodding. "I understand, and I'll be better." Lorado gave him one last polite nod before turning away. She didn't leave him humiliated. She didn't drag him through the dirt in front of everyone. She had delivered her message privately, calmly, and with dignity. And that was the real triumph. Not her wealth, not her presentation, but the grace with which she carried her power, proving that intelligence, patience, and self-respect are stronger than any insult, any arrogance, and any bully. Jabari walked out of the party humbled. Lorado walked back into it glowing. Lorado got home that night still feeling the warm buzz of the party, the applause, and the shock on everyone's faces. Instead of collapsing into bed, she sat on her balcony with her laptop and a cup of ginger tea. Lusaka's night lights shimmered below, and she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, peace mixed with pride. This whole evening wasn't about embarrassing Jabari or proving anything to her family. It was about finally standing in her own truth without shrinking for anyone. She opened her social media and began typing a post, not as a show-off moment, but as a message she wished she had heard years ago when she was still selling jewelry at the markets, hoping someone would take her seriously. She wrote in a warm, honest tone, almost like a conversation with every young woman who doubted herself. She shared a short version of what happened at the party, focusing on how people often judge others by their clothes, their background, or their silence. She wrote about being underestimated, about choosing patience over anger, and about staying focused on your dreams regardless of who laughs or doubts you. When she hit post, she didn't expect what happened next. Her phone started buzzing nonstop. Likes, comments, shares. Followers began tagging their friends, saying things like, "Read this," and "Every woman needs to hear this." Within an hour, her post spread across Lusaka. By morning, it reached women in Harare, Gaborone, Johannesburg, Nairobi, everywhere. Girls shared their own stories of being underestimated. Women in business thanked her for speaking up. Even men commented, saying the message opened their eyes. Lorado leaned back in her chair, smiling softly at the sky. She knew this moment would stay with her forever. Not because she exposed Jabari's arrogance, but because she turned something painful into something powerful. She whispered the words that had become her personal truth. True wealth is not only measured in money, it's measured in patience, courage, and knowing your worth. And for the first time in years, she felt completely, beautifully free.